Hello, welcome to Sunday Shift. And obviously, you see, we have an additional, amazing special guest. We are so excited to have you. I feel like we talk about you, we talk about Blaze, we talk about Craze every week. So having you here is really, really exciting for us. So welcome.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast. It's really fun. It hopped up on my algorithm one time on Instagram, one of the sound bites, and immediately I was like, oh, this is funny. So I
Oh,
immediately had to start
wow.
listening. And I think that it's so, soap operas are such drama. It's nice to have some lightness and some reprieve, as well as people who really are invested in the show. So thank you so much. I know you hit me up a long time ago and now we're on break. So I'm like, let's do it. Let's meet up.
Yes. I came across you a while ago, and I'm like a huge Station 19 fan, RIP to my favorite show. So I know that you and Jane
Mhm.
are friends, and I've seen how she supports you and you support her. It's been like really beautiful to see like genuine friendship.
It was really funny. We met through a mutual friend. So I did the spin-off of Jane the Virgin. I did the pilot
Hmm.
presentation. One of her closest friends worked on that. He had a birthday. We met there, connected. And it's what I love about her, is that she is exactly who she is. There is no pomp or circumstance about her. She is as real as you can be, and no ego whatsoever. And immediately, especially in this town, it's like you want to gravitate towards those people where there's no agenda, where who they are is who they are. And she is such a ball of energy and just so supportive. So to know someone that authentic is in my corner just makes me want to be a better person, but
Hmm.
also is just such a privilege. So yeah, it's been a wonderful friendship that's just evolved. And it's a really cool feeling to know that she has had all this success, but she can stay grounded. I think that for me, as I continue down this path, wherever it takes me with acting, there's a part of me that gets worried. Am I going to get a big head or not? And
Hmm.
I think people having examples like her in my life won't allow me to do that, or will keep me in check as much as possible. And I'm grateful for it.
Well, now that I know she's an excellent person, I have to go back and rewatch the series again.
You go to Rosewood, you go to Station. She's got some Zales. No, what did she do? Like a Zales Diamond commercial years ago. Just let's look it up. Let's look it up. Let's live it up. But also, she has her own podcast.
Yeah,
After we wrap, and she has a whole bunch of guests from the show. And I've been on it, and
I know. I saw
it's
you.
just so it's cool fun. She's again, it's her and her friend Gabby, and well, my friend as well. And you get that sense of her persona, and it comes through, and it
Hmm.
really is just like a sofa conversation with some of your friends.
Yeah. Well, not to talk all about her because we also want
I
to talk
know,
about
right?
you.
So we're just like that's the name of this episode, plot twist.
Just wanted to start, like, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, where did you grow up? All the stuff. Like, we don't know you, so we're really excited to get to know you as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was actually born in New York. My parents were both doctors, if you can imagine, met there during their residency program. My dad's from Mexico, my mom's from the Philippines. But when I was 3, we moved to San Diego. So I was raised in San Diego. The funny thing is I grew up, I went to private school, and I remember, so I used to, my mom always said I could whistle in tune before I could speak. So I think I always had some musicality. I think I was always kind of loud and everything like that. But, parents going through a divorce when you're just hitting puberty gets you a little in your feels. And then suddenly you don't feel, there was just an awkward phase growing up. And also just, not, being different shapes, being different color and everything like that. I now see that as something where I felt very like I just jumped into my nerdness. Like I was really about comic books. We have San Diego Comic Con there. But I never wanted for anything, but I always had a bit of a theater bug, but I didn't think I was great at it. I just thought that it was something that I could do to entertain. Ever since I was little, I really do feel that through my core, one of my favorite things is to make people smile. I think that was something that I used to do, and want and crave. And so when I went to college, I remember I majored in science, minored in theater at USC. And immediately, the powers that be aka universe or whatever, was just like, oh, you think you can do science? And then I took chemistry and failed it twice and realized maybe this is not the path. And so I decided to take a chance on theater. But again, my confidence in myself wasn't really that great. So when I was going through college, I mean, I graduated, but a lot of my classes, if you looked at my curriculum, were behind the scenes as opposed to, actual performance. But I did do some really amazing performance classes, but I didn't think much of it. So I went back to San Diego afterwards and tried my hand at songwriting. And that kind of led to a blip of a music career. But I got burned out very quickly. And I recognized that, I applaud musicians and artists who are on the road constantly and who are constantly coming up with new material, because I was not that girl. I just felt like I wasn't getting the return on investment, but I still had this acting bug. So there was a point that I was at this fork in the road where I was like, look, I know I'm resilient enough, but if I want a career with upward mobility, essentially, I need to start now, or I can try this theater thing, I can try this acting thing, and finally give it the go and see if it's going to work. And it did. It immediately, I tried my hand at acting. I took classes up here in Los Angeles, and in 3 months I made more progress than I did in the 3 years that I did music. So I kind of just listened to that and continued onward, and here I am today. I've had the real, it hasn't been all salad years, but it's been consistently moving the needle, and I get more and more opportunity. And certainly on this project, I continue to grow, and the soap has just allowed me to grow exponentially. But yeah, that's kind of where it all ended up. After getting my first agents, I realized that I needed to be in LA to go to all the auditions, commercially at least. And so now I'm here and on the show, and yeah, have been doing that.
Nice. You kind of answered my question a little bit. You've
Mhm.
talked to a little us about your acting journey. So, who do you feel are some of your inspirations, or who do you call or see as mentors in this journey of yours?
That's a great question. It's so funny because there are people. So I would say I love the multi hyphenate people out there. I love Viola Davis. I think that just like the fact that she has her production studio and all those things. I also find and admire the people who are able to just kind of, it's crazy, but we kind of have to, the people who are in positions where they say, I want to make this project and I have the means to, I'm going to. So you have the Eva Longorias, you have the Gina Rodriguez's, you have the Zoe Saldana's of the world. But acting and craft wise, I love Viola. I love Sandra Oh. I love Jodie Foster. I love Kate Blanchett. Those are the women that I tend to gravitate towards. And then also just, yeah, and I like them as performers. And then I also just love, in a weird way, the Pedro Pascals of the world, who are just, it seems like not only does he do excellent work, but he's also a great guy. And I think that therein is the goal of what I want to do. Like, I don't know, I forgot, can we cuss on this? Or do you prefer not to?
Please, please
Okay.
cut on this.
Like okay, then you know what? Here we go. Okay, welcome to the podcast. No, I feel like straight up, I just don't be an asshole. Like, I try to be as kind as possible, on set and off, and try to just be as authentically me as possible. And I feel like the people who aren't jerks, they're, I'd like to believe, are the people that, keep getting invited back, keep showing up, and keep doing all that stuff. So yeah, those are kinds of my inspiration. Currently, I'm definitely fixated. I just saw the Night Country, the True Detective with Jodie Foster, and just her work on that was incredible. I just was so blown away by it. And one of my favorite movies of all time is Silence of the Lambs. So I watch it every year, and I just kind of just watch the performances just by everyone. I think that you have your standouts in any show, but the product is the sum of its parts, and so everyone is just firing on all cylinders. And yeah, people like that. I tend to root for the little people, literally, because I'm 5'2". So anytime I see a tiny person front and center on a show, I'm like, So the X-Files, like Gillian Anderson being, 5'2" and mighty running around, or 5'3", I was just like, let's do it.
I really love that Silence of the Lamb is your favorite movie, because most people are like, I love Princess Bride, that's me. Or like something like but you're like, Silence of the Lamb is really
Silence of
something
the
I watch
Lambs,
every.
such a bop.
I also love that some of our faves are your faves. I know Tanya, we talked about Viola Davis so much.
Mhm.
So can you, we know that like the entertainment industry, you've like touched on this, can be tough. Would love to hear some of like your highlights and maybe even your lowlights. I remember your casting in Jane the Virgin, and I was like really excited because I love that show. So I'd love to know what happened with that.
Mm.
And also love your Kelly's Cup.
Baby, can we talk? Like, I was just like, I mean, whatever, but I just remember I was like, because when they changed it to Bobby's, I was like, so what are we doing with the Kelly's merch? So just I don't know, I like mugs, like I was just like,
Throwback.
yeah. And it was really sweet. So I was just very fortunate. I think that, I don't know, we'll probably talk about it, but there's a lot of stuff that I've accomplished and been a part of on the show that I never thought to in a guest role, but I'm jumping ahead. So highs and lows, let's talk about that. And actually, Jane the Virgin, so it's called Jane the Novella, was the working title. That probably was the thing that set me on my trajectory to where I am now. And it absolutely did, but also just, part of any business is not just the work itself, but also how you handle yourself, with the wins and the losses. And, for me, that was at the time was the highest high and the lowest low all at the same time. So the highest high for me was that experience. I ended up, that was a whirlwind because, when we're going through acting school, they try to give us the general rubric of how things proceed. As an example, if I remember correctly, Gina, when she was auditioning for the part of Jane in Jane the Virgin, she had to audition, I think, 7 or 8 times. And she was kept getting brought in. They would try new people, it was weeks long of her having to audition for this part that was so essentially her, right? And so that's just one cautionary tale. There's so many others, but for me, so I'm thinking, all right, well, when we did have pilot season comes around, I'll have the audition, then I'll have an audition, then I'll have it, I'll just have a series. If they vie for me, I will be there and I will have to be prepared for a marathon. So would you believe that I send in a self-tape, I get the audition and I go, all right, first of all, I'll get to my inbox. It's not an in-person audition. It's a self-tape. I go, all right. And it's a spin-off of Jane the Virgin. And I'm like, this could go 2 ways. It could be the greatest thing ever, or it could be just, you could immediately tell it's just trying to be a moneymaker. So I read the script, fall in love with it. It was so good. It was so good that I'm like walking around my day job being like, this is good. Like, you should read it. Like, I look like a Bible salesman. I was just like, this is really like, can someone agree with me on this? Because I just feel crazy because I've read this thing 3 times in the span of like me reading one script at the time. Anyways, I auditioned for it. I felt so good about it. And I sent it in. I felt so cool. I ended up like, at the time I was really into computer games, and there was like a computer game bar like by me. And I was like, I'm going to go and play computer games. I'm pat myself on the back. Let's go. And that, I remember I sent in my tape Friday morning at 11 because it was due at noon, and I had to go to a self-tape studio because back then it wasn't normal to do self-tape. So I had to go somewhere. So imagine I wake up in the morning, I do the self-tape in the morning at 11, I send it in at noon, I go to my day job. And then after my day job, I go to the eSports Lounge that Friday night. And then I get a call from I'm in the middle of a game. My agent's calling me. I'm like, what? And he's like, can you send us more of your demo reel? And I said, why? And he's like, oh, well, casting wants it. And it didn't occur to me because I'm thinking, okay, if they want me, they'll want me for more. This was not part of the plan that I was told in the classes I was taking. Anyways, fast forward to all of a sudden, I get Saturday morning, I get a text that, no, Saturday night, I get an email and a phone call from my agent saying that they need to get me in a director session on Tuesday. And then I'm going to do a network and screen test, network and studio test on Wednesday. So all of this to say, I booked the role in less than 5 days. It was the craziest thing. Yeah, because we had President's Day that weekend. That's why it was like, that's why Monday was off the table. So immediately I was like, oh, okay. And then 2 weeks later, we started filming the pilot. And it was by far, but getting that phone call, I'm getting emotional. I went, so they crammed it so much that the studio test, because the studio's paying the money, then the network, because the network's going to air it. Those are the two tests that you have to do. But because of the expediency of the project, they had to do them on the same day. So it was almost like this weird video game where like you had to pass the first boss to get to the next boss in the same day. So I remember I go to the studio test and they're like, Jacqueline, hang back. And I was like, okay. And they're like, so can you wear, because I was wearing what I wore for the director's session, which was jeans and a shirt. And they were like, so could you wear like something you'd wear on a first date? Because the jeans is kind of, we want to sell you as this like, you know, cute and summery and light person. And I was like, oh, okay. Did not have a first date dress. Like I dress in jeans on my first date. So immediately I leave the studio. Thank God it was right next to a whole bunch of like boutique shops. I walk in and I literally go, hey, what do you wear? I need a dress to wear on a first date. And they're like, okay, change, go back. And then I had like a little bit of time. And then I had to go, literally by the time I came home, put my heels on, changed, did my hair a little better, went to the studio. It was like the span of an hour and a half. Like it was just back to back to back. And then that evening, where the CW Studios is, or was at the time at least, was right down the street from my acting class that I would go to every Wednesday. And this was a Wednesday. And so I said, you know what, let me just be surrounded. Like I was on such a high after going through that process. I was just like, let me sit in the wind surrounded by my peers. And I walk in at like the tail end of what they're doing. And I remember just sitting surrounded by them. And they were like, so how was it? And just as I was talking to them, I got the phone call. And it was the showrunner. And she's like, you're my girl. And it was that I like scream. I've never considered myself a scream girl. Like I've always thought of myself as like you know, knock wood, if I ever get an award, you'll probably hear me from Burbank. And if the thing is in like downtown, like I will probably be like, wah, wah, wah. Like it'll be crazy. But I was screaming and it was so, and then again, to just be surrounded by all my friends and just being like, oh my gosh, that was the biggest high. And then when the show didn't get picked up, it was so ironic because I was driving to one of my girlfriend's houses. She had a big win that she wanted to celebrate. So we were just going to have champagne and everything. And then on my drive there, I got the phone call from my agent that the show was not moving forward. And it was like almost like a sitcom moment where my friend opens the door and she's like, yay. And I just walk up and I'm like, ugh, and immediately just started bawling. That experience for me really actually was a bit of a blessing in disguise, because what it did in a weird way was it actually shook my confidence a lot. You know, like I did have all the producers and everybody coming up to me and saying to my face, it had nothing to do with me. It had absolutely nothing to do with me. But you feel personal, especially if it's your first go around. And especially since I'm such a doer and I'm such a troubleshooter, I was like, what could I have done differently? What? And it doesn't help. Like even as much as they're trying to help salve the wound, it for a really long time, it was such a blow to my confidence and my ability, that it took me about a half a year to recover from. And it manifested itself in, I was not confident in my auditions. I wasn't confident in workshops that I was doing. I just felt like I needed outside validation because I didn't believe in myself, which essentially I almost needed to fall apart that way to rebuild myself, because now I know that everything I do to my best of. And if you're not picking up what I'm dropping, I know I've left everything on the table. So I'm not the piece of furniture you need for your apartment. And that's cool. But it was definitely character building and professional building. And I wouldn't change the experience for anything, because it also taught me, I spoke on that video about representation. Like, even though Gina's a Latina, it was something where I'm like, oh, but that's her experience. It could never happen to me. That pilot season, I was so excited. I was like, I want to be barista number 3 in the background. I want to serve someone a coffee and collect my co-star check and say I was in a pilot. To be the lead of a show, and then to know that I actually succeeded in carrying that show, made me feel so good about myself on the other side. So now for me, that's the goal. Like, I want to be top of show. I want to be able to create a harmonious environment around me where, we kick assholes to the curb and we just love on each other and we create something special. And that's now what I want to work myself towards, for sure.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing story. So let's go to a highlight. Now that you're in this amazing role, how did you get cast as Blaze? What was the audition process like?
So this one was pretty standard, except for the fact that we were actually brought in. So for us, the standard auditions nowadays is self-tapes in general. So we get something in our email, and we get an email, we put ourselves on tape. So I film it on my phone now, because we all have the setups after COVID, and then I send it in. So this was a pretty standard audition. Mark and I go way back. I took a class of his a long time ago. I don't think he publicizes it enough because he doesn't have the time to, but Mark is actually an excellent acting coach. He's an excellent director. He started as an actor, so he knows how to talk to actors. And he's able to break down scenes so easily, like you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so we kept in touch after that, because I just was really inspired by how he taught, and he, was a fan of mine and continued to be. So I get the audition. The audition was 2 scenes. And it was also, I had to sing. Now, I was supposed to get on a plane to go to Barcelona, because I had booked this cruise with all this commercial money I had. So I was like, all right, well, let me just audition. Because you know what? I'd rather show what I got so I can be front of mind for something in the future. I rarely turn down an audition unless it's something crazy, and like, trust, like, there's been some stuff where I call my agent and I'm like, explain why I need to do this. But for the most part, so I got the audition. It said that she was this pop star. She was flirtatious. She was confident. And I just remember reading it and just being like, oh, she's fun. So I had I hadn't watched any soaps in a very, very long time. But what I always remembered about Mark specifically is he loved grounded performances. I think a lot of traps that a lot of actors fall into, certainly a lot of my friends, is when they do auditions for soap operas, they think that it needs to be like, dun, 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 like we hype it up and Soap Dish, all these things. It's just like everything. And what I love about General Hospital is the story can be crazy, but we have to be honest. We have to be grounded. If we don't do our job being authentic, you're already you're changing the channel. The human connection in it is the authenticity of performance. The story, the mind controlling necklace, that's its own thing. We can't do anything about that. But what we can do is believe in ourselves enough. You know what I mean? So I did the audition and I felt really good about it. I had fun. I was flirtatious. I had a feeling that and what I loved about it was it said it was a recurring role. It was going to last either roughly 10 episodes or 3 months. That's what it said. And so I said, you know what? Perfect. That would be a great education. Everyone I've talked to this is the best acting class you can get when you learn on the job. And I basically was just like, cool, let's do it. So I auditioned, didn't think anything of it, was packing for Barcelona. And then lo and behold, I get a call back and it's in person. I had to go to the lot and test for COVID. And then I had to go to the lot and do the producer session. So the call back was actually with Mark, Lisa, the casting associate, Frank, and some of the EPs. I don't think everybody was there, but I know MK and Michelle were there for sure. And we did the call back in Frank's office. And I wore the exact same thing. I mean, look, I didn't think I was going to book it. So I wore bike shorts and a gray top, and I just put my heels on, and I had like this, like, I borrowed my mom's fancy bag. So I had like this fancy bag, and I was just like, this is what I wore in the audition. This is what, it was so funny. And then I sang a cappella. I sang on the audition to a track, Rolling in the Deep by Adele. So I sang it a cappella in the audition, or in the callback. And then they had to wait a day. They said, she's the #1 pick. We just need to confirm with the writers that this is a confirmed storyline. And then the next day I booked it. And luckily it didn't coincide with my, I was done before I needed to go to the airport, but then the flight got canceled and my trip got canceled. But then it started this whole journey in a weird way. So that's how I got the part.
Things are just working out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It lined up. Like, I bought travel insurance. Like, that was the one thing. Thank God for my friend Chelsea. She's like, buy travel insurance just in case you need to work. There's a required to work clause in some travel insurance. So I bought that, but because the plane literally was like, they didn't even like put me on a different flight. They were like, no, we're not working. Like, they canceled everything. So I had to like go to my travel insurance, and they covered everything. I was like so happy. So it lined up. Like, it was a weird, I don't know if you all have that, where it's like, even when you're in like your deepest, darkest, like most like sad, there's that little voice being like, no, this is how it's supposed to go. And I felt that, like, in that moment, I felt that. And wouldn't you know, I felt that in that moment. And then the next day I ended up booking True Lies, which filmed in Atlanta, which had to fly out the next Monday. So there was no, like, I was filming on a Thursday. So Friday I find out I got True Lies. So honestly, I just sadly took the bathing suits out of my suitcase, but I kept it packed. And then I flew to Atlanta instead of Barcelona, and learned so much on that experience as well.
Wow.
It lines up.
When did you know? Sorry, I'm tired. I'm stepping on your question. When did you know that this was going to be beyond like the first piece to like being like a long-term role?
So what happened was it wrapped. So what happened is with the first arc, so what was really impressive for me, what I really loved, was that 3-month, 10-episode role ended up extending to about 7 months. Like, I was supposed to technically wrap around February. I wrapped way after the nurses' ball. So like, I went from October essentially till May, and I didn't anticipate that at all. What signaled that for me was I saw that we caught Blink. Like, I knew my role from the get-go, because it was also in the breakdown of the character. I'm trying to catch this creepy manager. So once he got caught, I was like, okay, the writing's on the wall. My days are numbered. So as soon as that was done, then I took my cruise. And then I was like, living La Vida Loca. I was like, all right, you know what? Maybe they didn't kill me, so maybe they'll bring me back. I had every thought that they might bring me back to like sing at Brooklyn and Chase's wedding, maybe down the road. Like, I didn't know. Like, I was literally out of sight, out of mind. And then the writer's strike started and the actor's strike started. So what ended up happening was I was picketing alongside everyone. And then all of a sudden I get a text message from Mark, and he goes, hey, do you have a chance? I'd love to call you. And I was like, oh, okay. Now my head, I'm not thinking GH. I'm thinking he just wants to chat. He wants to see how the world is and blah, 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 catch up since we've reconnected over this past year. So he calls me up and he goes, hey, so we have this new arc coming up and Frank wants you for it. And he wants to know if you'd be interested in coming back to the show. Just to let you know, it is a queer role. You would be playing queer now, but he immediately thought of you. And I thought, oh, wow. Like, and I remember being like, I hesitated. And Mark was like, well, you're hesitant and I don't want to force it. And I said, no, I'm hesitating because I don't want it to be a token thing. I said, I want it to be done right. I said, well, the first like, we're at a time where we need to unpack our own microaggressions. So I was like, why did I hesitate? But I hesitated first because I didn't want to take the opportunity away from someone who could authentically live it. I identify as straight. But then I thought, well, you know what? This is scripted and I already made this character and this is just another layer to who she is. So that I was like, I felt at peace with. But the second part was like, I don't want it to be like, oh, we need someone to be queer suddenly, we'll do this. We need someone to be a dishwasher, like, I'm not trying to minimize it, but you know what I mean? Like, I just didn't want them to throw me in just for the sake of turning me gay for the sake of a story. And Frank got on the phone with me and he said, the beautiful thing about our medium is that we can tell stories in a very long form version, for better or worse, but we can earn this story, and we will earn it, and the audience will be in on it before the characters are. And he said, that's what we're going to do. And I said, as long as it's organic and honest, that's all that's important to me, because I don't want it to be a throwaway thing, because too many people live this experience where that's not fair. And he assured me that. And so he said, all right, well, that's good to know. That was July. And then I want to say end of August is when I started getting availability checks. And then and we started all over again. So, yeah.
So one of the bonuses, I feel, is that you get to work with the legendary Eva LaRue, who plays your mom on the show.
Yeah.
So were you familiar with her before she was cast, and what is it like to share scenes with her?
So I kind of knew her, but I didn't know her through All My Children. I actually knew her because she worked opposite my love interest on True Lies. So my love interest on True Lies was Omar Benson Miller, and he worked with her on CSI Miami. So they knew each other through that. And so I was like, oh, wait, she worked with Omar. So I hit up Omar and he's like, oh my gosh, I love her. She immediately came in and was just so kind, such a ball of energy. Like, she matches my energy, which I think is so fun, because I tend to be like, I remember Dan when he was on the show, or when I was working opposite him, I remember he was always like, you're a little fireball, aren't you? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she has a very similar sense of humor, but she also is super grounded and also super supportive. Like, if you do something great, she's definitely there to want to meet up, and she gives you something to work off of, and she's very generous as an actress. And it's that interesting sensibility of just that warmth that she inherently just has as a person that translates through how she holds herself. I think the mother and daughter thing for me, when you see us on screen is the first time we've ever seen each other, pretty much. Like, we rehearsed it, but I had never rehearsed opposite her. I had never done anything opposite her. I found out I had a mom in the show the minute I got the script. So that's the thing. They don't tell me anything. Like, when everybody's like, spoiler, I'm like, I can't tell you anything until I get the script. And then even I'm just like, what? So, but she's, to answer your question, she's an absolute delight. She's super generous on screen, super patient. And, and we've hung out afterwards, and, she's very self-aware of, like, the fact that her character is so vile at times, but to know her as a person is just, she's so kind, and you can tell why people want to work with her, because she is generous off camera and on. And I think that shows through.
It definitely does. We've said many things about that character, but we obviously love her as an actress. But
that's all we want.
Quite a lot. So she's doing a great job. I want to go back a little bit to the representation piece that you talked about, especially around the post that you made, which was really amazing, like seeing yourself, and then what you talked about with almost having like a responsibility to tell this like queer love story and like queer like story about Blaze. And just wondering like what that means to you and kind of what responsibility you do feel around that.
Oh, girl, you're gonna get me to cry. It's what I have learned through this experience is I know what it's. Let me back up and say, so I start from where I come from, which is I have seen many a Latino role in a pilot script. And then when you see the actual presentation, they're white, or they will change it, and they will claim, oh, it's because we couldn't find the right person for the role. And you sit there and I go, I know so many it doesn't have to be me. I know so many talented people, but we're not road tested because people haven't opened the door for us to try on those shoes, to show you what we can do. people are still scared about doing that. They need someone proven as opposed to, trusting that that person will prove themselves. So I know what that erasure essentially feels like. And I also know what that invisibility feels like. And not just for myself. Like I remember one time I ended up, there was a year where I wouldn't go to movies unless there was a person of color on the poster. Let me tell you, I saved a lot of money that year, but it's,
Right.
and but it's heartbreaking, right? What I didn't realize is that it's not just skin tone, right? It's about just representation in general. When I felt a huge responsibility because I knew it wasn't my lived experience. I made it a point. I'm very grateful that I have a lot of queer friends. I have a lot of gay friends who were willing to like share their experiences. I mean, when I went through the whole, I have a friend of mine who's Puerto Rican, who's gay. And when he told his parents, they gave him his Bible and he had to highlight all the passages of homosexuality and how it was a sin. And he had to sleep with it under his pillow. He is younger than me. This is something that still occurs. Whenever I see that vitriol out there, that people are like, this is old news. Why are we doing this story again? Look at the world right now. Look at our politics right now. It absolutely is relevant now. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where we need to keep being reminded until it's a non-issue. And then it becomes our history and we try not to repeat it. But it became so important to me because the outpouring of people who said, I feel seen. And the outpouring of people, especially like when I come out to my mom, there was one person who reached out and they said, I'm going through this right now. And it was heartbreaking. It was absolutely heartbreaking. And then I get some fan mail sometimes where I just got something recently. And this mother said, my kid came out to me. And unfortunately, I couldn't quite wrap my head around it. She basically said I wasn't as rigid as Natalia, but it was hard for me to wrap my head around it. Watching you go through this on screen with your mom, with Eva, it has allowed me to heal what I needed to heal. And sometimes we need that visual reminder. If we didn't need that visual reminder, the freaking safety guide on we wouldn't need stop signs. We wouldn't need, how to give the Heimlich maneuver. We wouldn't need the airline safety videos. We wouldn't need those because we wouldn't need that visual representation. Mm-hmm. It helps drive home the lesson so much more. It is so imperative for people because I remember my day job, advertise. I talk to advertising agent executives, people who run all the commercials we know. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of them saying, it's our responsibility in media to normalize things. If we normalize it on the screen, people in real life will feel it normalized. And for a lot, in the majority of the audience of what soap operas, who it caters to, they need that normalization. They don't need it forced down their throats, but they need that ease of that normalization and conversation. And so when the screen starts reflecting what I see outside of myself, or when it doesn't, but when that anomaly pops up, but because I've seen it on screen, it's normal to me, it's not going to be a big deal. And that's what I strive to do is it's such a huge responsibility because I don't want it to be stereotypical. I circle back to authenticity. I want it to be as authentic as possible because I know someone out there, if they're identifying with it and then there's something a little off, they're going to be taken out of it. And that's important to me because I know what it feels like to be looked over. And again, in my formative years, it didn't occur to me, but I remember thinking, oh, well, if there's not a nerdy brown girl, it sometimes has to be that specific. But if there's not someone who's living my experience on screen, then it must not be an experience worth writing about. That's what it translated to me as. And so I'm very vigilant. My core for what I do in this work is I want people to see each other through their hearts. That's like kind of like my holistic way of how I approach this work. And to see the amount of people who have been touched by this story, and the people who identify, and the people who have rallied around me, just being an ally. I wanted to be very transparent about that. I don't want to pander. I don't want any of that. I just want to say, this is, in a weird way, some element of activism that I feel, where if I can live and help you feel seen authentically on screen, that's how I can help and hold space for you. So it means the world to me, because I think that all marginalized communities feel this in one way or another, where the minute that we're looked over, suddenly there is this tinge of feeling less important. And we should never feel that way, ever.
It's like you fit it perfectly. We talk about this almost every week. This is like exactly it. I almost cried when you were talking. It was perfect.
As an actress, how do you navigate balancing between portraying a character authentically while also bringing some of your own creativity and personality to the role?
That's a great question. I think that in this day and age, just because of, I think if you are I will say this, I'm a acting class snob. I love acting classes. I love being in class. If you live your life authentically in general, you will always have it somehow permeate into your character. They always talk about this thing called essence. There's this essence that someone brings to the role. I think that's essentially their creativity, their innate being coming through that character. That's why, in some acting classes, everybody does the same scene. Everyone is going to do it differently, a little bit differently, because their lived experience is going to be just going to flavor the soup a little different, And so I think that it innately comes. What I will say is that creativity, though, has to be met with collaboration. So I do think that there's a mixed bag there. How do I balance it? What I basically do is I immediately take a look at the role and I say, what to me stands out? How does this character come off the page to me when I put it in my body, when I feel around in it? What I always kind of say that it's like every role is kind of like you're putting on a different suit and you're walking around with it and you're seeing how you can use it, how you operate, and then you take it off. It's almost like how we literally put on wardrobe and take it off. But essentially you're still wearing the clothes, the clothes aren't wearing you. So you're always going to come through innately. I think that when you start, and this is something I've learned on the set here, when you start trying to be like, look at this gold button, look at this collar, then you're starting to lose creativity, because now you're trying to prove something. And I think that they're inherently, if you are confident in your ability and your craft, and it just becomes this, and I think it all stems from inspiration is what it comes down to. I think when finding the balance is really just essentially play. It's just play. It's kind of seeing how this character exists in your body, and then also being open to collaboration. The best example of this is when I did the audition of Blaze initially, I made her this super confident person. I knew that I had a creepy, predatory manager, but the way I played her in the audition and in the callback, when Link puts his hand on mine, I swatted it off in the audition. I swatted it off in the callback, because to me, the confidence is what came through in Blaze. And I was like, who is this motherfucker? Like, fuck you. Like, I was like, literally like, pacha, like I could not be bothered. I'm on the set. They basically copy and pasted that scene with a couple of tweaks. Dan puts his hand on mine. I swat it away. I'm like, this loser. Because I thought that I was going to be the driving confident force in bringing down Link. What I didn't realize was that I was his current victim. And that was something that was told to me on set in that moment by Frank. And then we had to go back to one and reset. So now all of a sudden I have to pivot everything that I've played with and funneled to now have a moment of terror, as opposed to a moment of, I can't be bothered. So that's the dexterity and flexibility that I think comes with experience and training. But that's where I think you need to leave a little wiggle room. And I always encourage actors, whenever I work with them, I'm like, okay, when you book it, great, but be open to play, be open to adjustments, because you might be given something that changes your entire outlook on how the character is going to go. And
in
that
the moment,
baby, She had to pivot. I was like, turn signal, let's go. Like, I was like, oh shoot. So, but we did it. And then that really set me on a course. That story, when I first started, that really set me on a course. I'm very, knock wood. I haven't been in a predatory situation like that. But again, that made me go down the rabbit hole of learning as much as I could about sexual abuse, about predation, about that stuff. And it really opened my eyes and humbled me in that way. And again, it's about living authentically, because I don't want to, if someone is living that, I do not want to assume for a single second. There is no room for assumption. That's ego driven. I can't do that. If you've lived it and you've written a book about it, I'm going to read it. I'm going to absorb it, and I'm going to look for the interviews. I'm going to try to do my best. I'm going to talk to the people who live it, because honestly, at the end of the day, that's how you grow as a person in general.
Yeah. And an artist. Just a little bit of switching gears. One of the things that we had such a good time watching was the daytime Emmys. And when Kelly Clarkson like shouted out the GH table as being so much fun, that comes off in like the way y'all interact. So just wanting to know, like, why is it so important to you that you have fun times with your coworkers? How does that translate on screen? And then like, who are the people on set that you're the closest to?
That's great. So for me, here's the deal. I feel like, I think it's imperative to have fun, because especially at the pace we're going at, I mean, like, it's funny, Jane and I would talk about it, because she would be like, oh my gosh, I have 20 pages today. I have 20 pages today. And I looked at her and I was like, oh, all day. Oh, all day. Oh, that's cute. I said, I have 20 pages in 40 minutes. I said, we're cute. Like, and we laugh about it, but it is that, it is that sense of like, we just go gadget. There's no stopping. And I mean, like, one of the people that gets me every time is Maura, but it's like the emotional volatility that you have to have. Like, we're filming out of order and we're filming fast, and you need to emotionally be there yesterday to be here today. Like, in the turn of a second, you need to be sad, and then next scene you need to be like, you didn't know you were going to get hit by that bus or whatever, so like, the dexterity that we have to have, it's a lot of mind stuff. There was I remember I was talking to Amanda, and she was talking, after Professor Chase dies, like the emotional toll physically that it took on her as a person. Like, yeah, she put away Brooklyn, but emotionally she just felt everything. You kind of need that levity. And I'm not saying that you need to be best friends with everyone on every set. I don't think that's going to happen. The people I've gravitated towards serendipitously have been Tabby, and I connected actually during the nurses ball last year. I jumped off the stage and I was just chilling, and immediately she just started chatting with me, and we ended up hitting it off, and we ended up just like connecting, and then the rest is history. I went to her birthday party and I ended up meeting Avery there. And and I remember I was at the bar with Avery, we were just chatting, and immediately Avery just goes, can we exchange numbers? This sounds weird, but I think we should hang. And I was like, absolutely. She and I have become fast friends. Me in the hair department and the makeup department, I think that's where it's at.
Tell.
Baby, when I tell you, I think it's they put up with my crazy, and I think that's why I find home there. When I first got back on the show, I was bouncing around makeup wise the first time when I was on the show. When I got brought back, Priscilla, she in our makeup department, she ended up being like, you come to my chair. I said, okay. And we've just been fast friends there. Tabby comes over, we just chill there. One of her all-time people was Evan. So Evan was in her chair one time. I walked in there, and immediately, I know it sounds weird, but I have a cousin who's like basically part Filipino, white, and part Viking. So he has blue eyes and he has blonde hair. So when I say Evan looks like my cousin and reminded me of my cousin, it comes from a true place. It's not like, Jacqueline, we're building bridges. No, like, legit looks like my cousin. And immediately we hit it off. We have such a wild sense of humor, and he legitimately lives down the street from me. So I would say those are my core people that I kind of gravitate towards, that all somehow mysteriously just surround the makeup chair kind of situation. But yeah, I think it's just so important to have morale up, because when you have long days, you need to be able to want to say, you know what, I want to show up for these people. And it makes it so much easier. And I do remember, like, it wasn't the most welcoming thing, but like one thing that Josh Kelly does all the time that I'll never forget is he'll go into the area where all the background actors are, and he'll be like, thank you so much for this. Like, you guys are making this happen. And I mean, just being kind, like at your core, just being kind just makes everybody just breathe a little easier. And yeah, it might be a rough day, but we're going to get through it together. And I think that you have to have those moments of laughter and levity, because otherwise it would be a drag. It would be an absolute drag having to do some of the hours we do. I mean, like the wedding was not fun to be on your feet in heels that whole time, but you make fun of, you make the most of it. And I'm just grateful, I have some core people, and then I just have people that I work with that I still have the utmost respect for.
Awesome. So you use your social media to bring awareness to really important issues. Why is that important to you? And do you ever worry that there might be an impact the roles that you have in the future or may get in the future?
Kind of. I think that, so it's important to me because I honestly feel like if I have this platform, I might as well use it to shine light on things. I've always been someone who's been involved in community service. Like, I try to volunteer as much as I can. And I think that, again, time is energy, but also platform is energy. And, and to err as human, I sometimes, need to do more research on things that I post and stuff like that. But for the most part, like the things that I have real fundamental beliefs in, women's rights, is one of them. And then LGBTQ plus representation, absolutely. And marginalized community representation, absolutely. But I just think I don't know. I am the biggest, I will say this. I've had to learn how to show off my flowers, but I am the biggest hype woman, but I am really bad about hyping myself. So I think part of the reason I use my platform is because I kind of love the idea of being able to say, oh, I am posting. Don't you see? I mean, it's just, and at the same time, I don't have to be like, it's me. Hi. Like I'm not that person usually. I tried, it was exhausting. I don't even have a TikTok. I think I'd pass out. So it's kind of since I have this platform, and if there's stuff that is near and dear to my heart, I'd rather use it there to signal boost things and people that I feel passionate about and that I want to celebrate. And then also for me, do I think it might impact roles in the future? Possibly, but at the same time, also things that are so arbitrary have impacted roles that have nothing to do with social media. And at the end of the day, I will say that if you want me, you want me. Like I really do believe that. If you want, like, I mean, there have been people that we have seen out in these streets that they've built whole shows around, and they've barely started acting. So if they really want you, they will make it happen. And if they don't want you, then that wasn't the place for you. I really do believe in, you should feel supported. You should be supported in the spaces you're in. And if what you see is threatening, if what you see is not something that they align with, then it wasn't yours to begin with. And I need to have peace with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I have just a couple more questions. People who were like, we're gonna have Jacqueline on the show. So you have had like really heavy stuff. Like you have had, as I looked, like you had the really heavy thing at the nurse's ball, and then you just did the scene where it was like you had to like go off on your mom. And it's always been so public. Like they're not like there's only one other person. Like there's everybody surrounding you. So can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what that means? And then is there anybody who's like your dream? Like, I haven't worked with this person yet, but I want to work with this person.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I would love to have, just because I love her as a person. I think that she is people. I think she's a sleeper hit personally. I don't think people know her as a person. I think she's an incredible person is Rena. I wish I had more
Mm.
of Rena. Um, that's just an aside though, because I just think she's brilliant and I think it'd be really fun. Like I'm a very big energy person. So acting opposite her energy, just her as a person in life is so much fun. So I'm like, I would love to have some meaty scenes opposite her. Um, what does it feel like having those scenes in, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Just like how it's like so public. Like, some scenes are like there's one other person there, you're giving your all, but you've had to give your all in front of everybody twice, essentially.
Yeah, it's so funny because the answer is yes, it's difficult, but it's also really wonderful feeling, again, like circling back to energy, feeling that energy opposite people, to be able to have not just on, and here's the deal, not just ensemble, right? We're not talking like it's just, the day player that's playing the barista. We're talking about legacy characters in these
Mm-hmm.
in these scenes, to feel their, like, first of all, there's always a wind up, right? Like it's never just me like walking out and being like, ah. There's always this lead in, and everybody's throwing their momentum, their talent, their energy, their grace into this arc of a story that's going to happen in that episode. You feel it, and you feel like, holy crap, we're making television and we're making some really important TV. I think for me, it doesn't, I feel the responsibility in telling the story. That's my core throughout this whole thing. I feel is like I have a responsibility to the story and telling it as best as I can. In those scenes, it kind of takes the pressure off, because it's like, for me, it's almost like I need to help keep this boat afloat with all these other people. I don't, yes, in those scenes, my through line is the most prominent, but I don't know, in a weird way, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like, again, it's such a talented group of people that you're acting opposite. Finola's another dream person I'd love to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Just energetically coming off of those people, you almost are like, I don't know, it hypes me up as opposed to terrifies me. So
Okay.
I think that I do get the nerves and the butterflies beforehand when I'm prepping, when I'm going to my acting coaches, when I'm going to mark upstairs, running lines. Like I get the butterflies and I know this means a lot beforehand. But when I'm in it, I kind of let go, let God, and I go, all right, let's see if we can hang with these people. Because make no mistake, I'm not batting 1,000. Like there are some scenes that we move on from because the director has what they want, and I sit there and I go, all right. Like I'm like, all right, well, we did that, But in those scenes, I think I feel the energy, I feel the love, I feel the space being held for me. I ride that wave. I love it. And but yeah, to answer your question, I mean, there's so many people on that show. Are you kidding me? And now that I'm starting to actually get to know a lot more people, I'm like, oh my gosh, it'd be fun to be opposite you. Oh my gosh. So yeah, Finn, Mo, I mean, I've had some moments with him, but it'd be nice to actually just feel what that energy is. Nancy, I love Nancy. I think, like, I keep telling her she needs to have a one-woman show. It would sell out. I would be front center. She's great. I love her. So yeah, there's just Jeannie. I would just love to be opposite Jeannie. That would be such energy. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people, but I love those scenes.
Yeah.
I think also it helps that it's something important being said. And so I think that to have that support by that incredible cast. Oh my gosh, Kirsten, I almost forgot. More scenes with her, please. Maxie, all day, every day. Like I would love it.
All day, every day.
All
We love
day, every
her.
day. We just need the Maxi month, and we just do it. And then we just live our best lives, and we just watch her go off. Yeah, I thrive. I thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the best parts of watching ensemble scenes is looking at everyone's reaction to what's happening. And I can imagine having those reactions to play off of is really beneficial to doing scenes. So speaking of a great time, what has been like your best day at work?
I think my best day at work for me personally was when I did the coming out scene. And the only reason I say that is because it was the first time that I was given a big chunk of stuff. It was the first day where I really felt like I had to prove myself. It was my first intimacy scene. It was my first everything in that space. Um, and so I don't know, I felt really proud of coming out of the other. It was 40 pages I had to do in the span of 3 hours.
Wow.
And yeah, and that also included the intimacy scene. So it was my first time working with an intimacy coordinator. Kate was super supportive, so that was super helpful. Like, you know, it wasn't like big deal at all. It was just another day in the office, which I actually think helped my nerves a lot. Like there wasn't a lot of pomp and circumstance put around it. And it was so funny because I think that I put this veil of cool and confident when I'm in the, because I'm like, we have to do the thing. And then I process it afterwards. So I remember going through that day, and it was the first time meeting Eva, working with her. But I was so proud. I remember Frank came down on the set afterwards and he gave me the biggest hug and he was like, that was your best work yet. And I just said, I felt that.
Wow.
He's like, you should be really proud of yourself. And then I remember being in the hallway and Kate sees me and she goes, are you okay? And I was just like, ugh. And she was like, oh God. And she gave me a hug. And basically she's like, are you okay? And I said, I think it's just the overwhelm that I felt when I first got this chunk of stuff and having to push that back and push that back and push that back to get through the stuff and now be on the other side of it. I think I'm finally opening that cabinet and letting all those emotions come through, because it was also gratitude, it was also joy, it was also exhaustion, it was also fear, but it was really cool. And she, you know, she texted me on the way home to make sure that I was, she's like, if you need to talk, let me know. I was like, no, I'm good. I ended up having, because it was also a heartbreaking scene, you know, because at the end of that, you know, if at the end of that entire interaction, my mom completely rejects me. And it was heartbreaking. Like even now I'm getting emotional. And it was just like taking the day and going home after that. Like I ended up being able to grab a beer with a friend of mine. And so we ended up just, you know, trying to unplug from that. I was really proud of that moment. And I'm really proud of the scene that just aired recently, where I put my mom in her place. I worked really hard on that. It meant a lot to me. And honestly, after doing the scene, I mean, just having, like, even in that moment, like Kirsten came up to me, Eva came up to me, everybody in that space, even Cynthia was filming next. She was holding the door for me downstairs on my walk down. And she said, that scene was so powerful. She's like, you were so, like, getting the kudos from people was just, it felt important. I felt like I did the job. I'm really bad at receiving compliments, and to get so many so quickly it really meant a lot to me. To the extent where we have Kyle on our show, he's my favorite grump sometimes. And he even told me, he's like, remember this episode for your Emmy reel. And I was like, I just wanted a chocolate bar, Kyle, but thank you. Like, yeah, those are my proudest moments, when I know that it's important work. And I felt like something shifted a little on the other side of it. I feel really, really good about that.
That scene that you're talking about, I think that the people that you've talked about who have been really impacted by your character, I think they're going to be impacted by that moment, because I'm sure that's like what people have wanted to say to people who didn't support them in their lives. I thought that was like a really powerful and important moment for your character.
No, I appreciate it. And I knew that it was going to be. I had a lot of friends of mine. I had a few of my friends who watch the show who are gay call me up and be like, not me tearing up, not me having a moment. I had some crew people come up to me and they immediately were like, like they to the extent where they're like, you said so much that I didn't think I needed to say, but needed to be said. And it's so funny because, you know, at the end of the day, I don't come up with the words. It's just like, I'm the vehicle for them. So it really goes to show the excellence of the show. Like, I mean, yeah, it has its hiccups here and there. I know y'all talk about it all the time. It's so much fun. I'm sitting there with my popcorn, listening. But I think at the end of the day, where this show really shines is when you need those impactful moments. You know, I'm very privileged to be able to say that I'm one of the the privileged people that get moments like this know the import and that are able to deliver it in a way that is impactful, have a supportive crew and cast and group of people that help deliver. It takes a village. It takes a village to hold space for stories like this. And I'm just really grateful that that they trusted me with this, that I was able to deliver. And to your point, there have been so many people that have reached out to me, and, I try to keep that fan person boundary, but I read them all, and it's so touching to hear so many people so impacted saying thank you for being that mouthpiece. And I gladly will do that. I will do that any day of the week because I know how important it is. And sometimes we're just not that person. We're not the person who's going to be on the mountaintop screaming and saying all this stuff. But if you feel seen, that's all that matters to me, genuinely.
A fun question that we had was, how famous do you think Blaze is? And it was because there was at one point that Brooklyn had called Blaze Beyonce. We were like, wait a second, she has a song. Like, so how famous is Blaze? Your face is killing me.
As famous as she wants to be. I want to say that I think she's an up and comer. I don't think that she is. I think the aspiration was Beyonce.
As we all.
I think, right, all of us every day. Look, if they change my last name, I think they can change the status of my import in these streets. Because and I'm not saying this as like me, but to your point, if I'm walking into Kelly's or Bobby's now, shouldn't everyone in the background be like, if Beyonce walked in, I'd be like, check out this bitch. I'd be like, I have my phone. Shoot. Like, I would be snapping pics. No one cares.
We gotta work on that. We gotta
wait, no one in Port Charles cared. Like, no one does that with mobster Sonny Corinthos either. He can walk anywhere. No one's like,
right. You know what? That's key. But you know what? I will say this. Probably for him, they don't want to look at him funny. You know what I mean? Like, I could get that. Like,
right.
if you recognize Sonny in these streets and Sonny recognized you recognizing him, we might have a different conversation at the end of the day.
I don't know. But I'd be crossing the street personally. I'd be like, all right, we go the other way.
I did that one time. I saw someone, I was at Costco. I saw someone coming down the other aisle. It was like the short book aisles. And I did one of those where you like squat, you turn your cart away and you go the other way. Right. I did that one time. It was crazy, but that would be fun. Yeah. I just feel like, man, I wish we had some more, like, I get we're a serious show, but I love comical moments like that. Like, I would just love something where like you do a double take where you're like, I think there was a line recently that I was kind of speeding through one of the episodes, and it was Chase and Brooklyn, and Brooklyn said, like, the way Amanda delivered it was freaking hilarious. And I was just like, more of that, please. But to answer your question, I know I'm skirting around it. I think she's up and comer. I think she's like, she's like maybe opening act at, like, she's like maybe next, almost top of show at like a music festival. She's not the headliner, but she's like near the headliner. So you're almost like, yeah, she's not the 30 font. She's like the 24, but she's still up there. But, and the way that I've morphed it in my head, at least at Port Charles, is she loves this space because she's allowed to be who she wants to be. So I think that the way that I've wrapped it around in my head is that there's this air of anonymity that's just agreed upon the people of Port Charles. There's
I like that.
Like people walk, when you drive in, there's an NDA that everyone signs, like something like that, where there's just like an ease of person. Cause I feel like I'm very just expressive around my friends and family. Like even at Metro Court, I don't know all those people. Not everyone's a Corinthos or whatever. So I think that ultimately for me, I think that there's just this agreed upon discreetness at Port Charles that allows her to be herself. But I would like to think that she's not Beyonce, but maybe Destiny's Child when there were 4 of them. You know what I mean? Like maybe that's where she's at.
We like that. We have Tanya. We have gotten through all of our scripted questions. Tanya, is there anything else that you wanted? I feel like
Well, I
we
think
talked to you
there's
forever.
one last question. Like, what kind of music do you actually listen to, and how does your taste differ from Blaze's?
Ooh, yeah.
Ooh, that's a good question. It's so funny. So I think that Blaze comes out and says, right, like, I want to sing folk, and she sings pop. And I think that the music that the show has chosen for me to sing is a little bit between the two. Like, it's kind of like rock, like indie rock alternative kind of stuff. Um, so for me, Jacqueline, I think I listen all over the place. I listen all over. My mom, so when I was growing up, it was the first time that I feel like all vinyls were being turned into CDs. So my
Mm.
mom was like reliving her youth. So we had in the car, we had the giant binder of CDs that you would put it in the 5 disc changer, hope for the best. And so, I mean, I listen to everything from ABBA to Kylie Minogue to Kali Uchis. But then, like, if I'm feeling a certain way, I'm listening to, gosh, like Allman Brothers. I'm listening to Beatles. Like, I run the gamut. My current thing that I do actually now is and then when for some reason when I'm at the gym, and if I go to like a boxing gym, it's got to be like freaking just, what am I trying to say? Like, it has to be like NWA, it has to be Tupac, like it has to be all this stuff. Like, I'm like, let's go. Like, I'm so like excited, like Eminem, like, oh, I'm just like, let's go, let's rage. But I digress. I think right now what I'm doing is kind of Spotify has this thing where it just kind of makes day lists for you based on just algorithmically what you might like. So I'm kind of in this space right now of exploring new music, and it's hit or miss. But
Mm.
actually I'm excited because I'm going to the Missy Elliott concert in town. Oh,
Ooh,
she's with Busta and Sierra. I can't handle it. You friends, I cannot handle it. I'm so excited.
that
So
sounds like a
yeah,
good show.
it spans the
Yeah.
gamut. I would say that I feel like Blaze probably listens to, I think she listens to me. I think what she would listen to are the people she aspires to be. So I think the Beyoncés of the world, the Taylor Swifts of the world, the Shakiras of the world. I think that um, I I would say that that to me would be who she is, because she is so driven. And I think she would also be in that mindset because her mom is so controlling. Her mom is probably like, listen to Selena, listen to the greats, listen to the people that you should aspire to be, because you want them to become your peers, kind of situation. So for me, I think that Blaze would inherently listen to the bigger names on the regular to condition herself. But I think in the background, she'd probably be listening to a lot more like easygoing. I think like Florence and the Machine, kind of like, I mean, she's not that easygoing, but just like a lot more, just like a lot more indie in her spare time. And I say that I feel like I would have more of a musical appetite as a, like, I feel like more musical explorative as Jacqueline, but I feel that Blaze would be very tactful in how she does stuff. That it all served purpose, but I think she would also be she'd also love to discover music in that way, to find sounds and see what moves her. I honestly, maybe she'd be a little more eclectic than me, trying to find new sounds, new worldly music that might inspire her.
Right, right. Well, we cannot appreciate you enough. I can't even talk anymore. Enough.
Enough.
We have been fans. Like I said, I've been a fan. I've been following you for a long time, even with the Jane the Virgin thing. I was like,
Oh,
this is perfect. So we are so happy to have you on General Hospital. We are so happy to have you with such an impactful, important story. And to talk to us, especially this week where so much of the story came to a head. We have so
perfect
much gratitude to
timing.
you. Perfect timing.
Perfect timing.
Perfect.
I'm so bad with like air date codes. So when this lined up the
Uh,
way it did, I was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have so much to talk about. I would have hated for it to be like a week where it's like, well, let's just talk about what happened on the show. Like,
Yeah.
well, we
I don't know
try not
what's
to ask
going
a
on.
whole lot of that because we know you
Right.
can't give any spoilers. We watch enough interviews. You can't talk about what's
Yeah.
happening.
I
So
know, it's
getting to know
crazy.
you is amazing.
It
No, thank you so
is.
much. And thank you for holding space for me and getting to talk about this stuff. I don't feel like I feel like it's fun to actually get to say all the weird inner workings of my brain. But I'm super grateful. I'm super grateful to y'all fans that kind of hang in there through thick and thin, but also just like, that's the one thing that I've been so appreciative of when it comes to this job, is this is the first opportunity of a gig where I've been like, oh, I'm on this show, and everyone has a core memory around it, because it's been literally in people's living rooms for so long. And so it's just really fun to see the generations that have kind of been a part of this show, but also the people who have followed it through thick and thin and seen it through all these different waves. And I'm just so privileged. I really do feel very grateful that I jumped in on a time, when I first joined the show, this is when they actually did turn 60. And so it was just such a great gift to just see the impact of the show and how much it really mattered to people, but also just for the most part, how kind all of you fans are. I think that's something that I wasn't anticipating, because I'm not saying like I'm lowly in the corner, but I'm just like, I'm not contract, so I'm not so that's why also the opening credits meant so much to me, because it's like, who am I? I'm not that. Like, I didn't expect that. I've just been given so much opportunity to, I say that I'm confident in myself, but this show has helped me with my confidence in so many ways, because it's also shown me possibility. I think that's at its core what representation is it's giving someone the idea that they could possibly be that. And so the possibility that this show has provided me has been so wonderful. And part of that possibility is meeting incredible people like you, who keep the torchlight on, and also just thank you so much for being interested and being fans and being engaged and creating community. I think it's wonderful.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you
so
are
much.
definitely that. You're that. You're that girl, and we're gonna keep telling you that, and we're gonna keep hyping
Oh my God,
you
thank
up.
you so much. Okay,
We're not
fine.
gonna. We know you don't like compliments, as you said, but we're gonna keep giving them. We're gonna keep giving flowers, and thank you.
Thank you both. Honestly, I really appreciate it. This has been such a wonderful experience.
And emotional. You've had me to tears almost 3 times.
No,
it's really hard for me to be like, what?
You're like, I'm sorry, I did not prepare for this. Oh, no. Let me tell you. No, it's moving work. It's moving work, and it's definitely made me a lot more in tune with my emotions, and just, but I think gratitude is always overwhelming, and I think we need to share more of that. So I'm grateful to you, Tanya, and also to you, Tracy, for just holding space for me, and for having this wonderful conversation. I genuinely, this was so much fun. Can't wait to do it again.
Yes.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tanya's gonna. Thank you for still being with us. As you know, we just had this amazing interview with Jacqueline. If you are not following her on social media, make sure you are on her Instagram specifically. She really does signal boost some amazing things. And Tanya, I really have to say, I'm glad we had this conversation with her this week, especially given how I felt about how the week went.
Yeah, it was very serendipitous that we were able to get Jacqueline on our show when a big part of her story was aired this week. So kudos to Tracy.
And to her. We were just chatting.
And to her, yes. For being able to be on the show with us this week in particular.
I will say, I mean, it was something I kind of said to her, but just like, and we talk about this every week, it's never the actors. The actors show up. And some great things. I loved Maxie this week. I love them letting Maxie be Maxie. You know what I mean? Like, I really do enjoy that. I like Alexis being a lawyer again. I don't like what's happening to Ava, but I love Maura West because she acts down every time. Okay? Maura West, doesn't matter what she's doing, whether it's raising her baby, whether it's destroying a life, I'm gonna watch what she has Ava do, because she is magical, and like having her on screen is just it's what it is. Like, what a blessing to have this actress here. That's what I have good to say.
Well, let me highlight let me
Please
highlight the
highlight some great
performances.
things. Yes, please.
So, like you said, Maura West, amazing.
Acting down.
Regardless of how we feel about the story, the actors that were portraying the characters were amazing. So,
Hmm.
Jacqueline Grace Lopez, Eva LaRue, boo to your character, but man,
You're doing your thing.
you
Yeah.
were doing it. And Kate Mansi. But also outside of this story, Dominic Zambrogna.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I know that's
babe,
your boo,
it
but
is my boo. But the way, Dante was like, I'm not going to let you kick me out of your life. You
hmm
know, not any shout out to, Michael. Michael has tried over and over and over again. And finally, Sonny was like, whatever. And Michael's like, okay, fine, whatever. But Dante is not going to let this man make bad choices, is going to stick by him regardless. So, yeah, those were the
yeah.
highlights for me as far as acting performances go.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they were great. I mean, the actors are never the issue.
Never.
And it's hard because for us, like, we're always going to be critical. We're always going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the things that we love. We're going to talk about the
Mm-hmm.
things that we don't love.
Mm-hmm.
And this story that they're doing with Blaze and Christina, I'm going to tell you what was frustrating to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, Tanya, if you feel this because like a lot of our work is like activism work,
Mm-hmm.
but like this demonizing of activists felt very weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
So like obviously they have this thing come out about Blaze, and I'm like, I just feel like this is like maybe a 90s story that they're putting in 2024. Because in 2024, I feel that if we had an artist come out after how like monstrous her mother was, people would rally. I think queer people would rally around this artist
Right.
and say, this happened to me, or I had this kind of parent, because we also haven't seen Blaze like overtly be in like relationship with men. We have not seen her be like pushed to have a relationship with men, or to like pretend as if she is heterosexual. So to act like there's a big issue with her like being quote in the closet, I just, for people I know, I don't feel like they would have that same issue. I don't know. How did you feel about that?
It's interesting. It's like they kind of lumped activists into all the same group. So
Yeah.
you would have definitely some progressive activists, and you have people who are maybe conservative activists. To say the activist is, I think, not being very clear about who's saying what. And so I had a problem with that, because then you would say, okay, so maybe people who are progressive and liberal aren't all on one accord. And to an extent, that can be seen as true. Well, I think maybe in, like, if you think about the Democratic Party, definitely people in the Democratic Party are not on one accord. But when you say activists like that, then it makes it seem like activists. I don't know. It just seems weird
It
to
makes it
me.
seem like people who are fighting
Fighting
for
for equal
fighting
rights and equal
are the same
justice.
as bigots.
And yeah, and like there's no grace. Like, because if you think LGBT community, probably of all communities as well as people of color, probably have more grace for each other, right? So
Hmm.
probably would understand whatever nuance that Blaze is having to deal with, and why she may not have felt comfortable coming out. We've seen stories about people who have come out after a long time, and we've given them grace, and we've given them kudos for, being able to share their truth. But to say that there's people out there who are demonizing you just doesn't seem
It
right.
just doesn't feel right.
It doesn't feel right.
I don't. Do you know who Amber Ruffin is? She's a comedian and she's a writer. She
Uh-huh.
writes for Seth Meyers. She had her own show on like
Right.
Peacock. And so the last day of Pride Month, she put up a post that was like, you know, I don't know if it was like if she's publicly coming out, but she like talked
Right.
about being queer, and I think she hasn't talked about it before. And her comments were just filled with people being like, "Love you, girl. So happy. Welcome." That's what 2024 is. And I'm not saying that there are not bigots out there. We know that there are bigots. We would never put down or just or say that bigots don't exist. We would never say that. And there are like so many more people. So I don't know if we're gonna see in the next week or so, but we needed to see it this week of people who are gonna like put their arms around Blaze and Christina. And also, I'm sorry, but like the Davis Corinthos whatever center was started with mob money. So you're telling me that people had no problem with mob money, but they have a lot of problems with like Christina dating somebody who might have been in the closet. I again, I say this because we just had Jacqueline on here. I don't have any problems with the actors. This writing, they needed somebody else in that writer's room. They needed somebody who had the power. It's not just about having diversity in the writer's room. It's about having people of diverse backgrounds having power to be able to say what is and what is not. Because if anyone else would have seen this story, I think they would have been like, oh no. And I appreciated it when Jacqueline spoke because I remember being critical of the story in the first place of like even her mom like being so homophobic. That's a reality. So it's a story you can tell. It's real. This is not reality. This is just not reality. People would not have turned on them like this. That doesn't even make sense. And then to have deception being in the room, a room full of like straight women basically saying they're about to fire Blaze because her mom is a bigot. What are we talking about? Her mom's not famous.
And just that, I think it'd be good to have that conversation, and I don't know if GH is willing to have that conversation, but really talk about what kind of voices are we letting make our decisions for us. When you're making a decision on how to move forward based off of comments that really amount to those who are trolls, that says something about you. I mean, it really does. And to have a story which would just kind of give undue importance to people who just make comments on social media who aren't real, that is giving validation to these sites that don't need that validation. And I
Right.
hope that GH really thinks about that in terms of the story moving forward. Like, we don't want to give people who are hateful, who are just there just to be trolls, validation. We want to nip that in the bud. And so we don't even want to have I don't even want to see a story that would be like that. If you want to do a story, you want to be like, okay, so these are a whole bunch of trolls who are making all these comments. Let's ignore them. Let's look to the bottom line. Who is our customer? What do they really feel? Hey, if you don't even know what they feel like, you can have on the show, okay, maybe we need to do a focus group. Get a focus group of our real customers and hear how they're thinking and what they're saying instead of relying solely on social media. I think that's a huge mistake as a company
Yeah.
and as a story for, so yeah.
I mean, it's even like having Sasha come and be like, yeah, they were on me when I hit somebody with my car and I was drugged up versus like, and no shade. I mean, like we have compassion for people who have addiction. Like that's not the point.
Right.
But like that being like the way where are other queer people to like surround them?
Oh my
Where's
God,
Terry
where
to
is
show up
Terry?
and be like, how can I support you? Where is Brad to show? Well, maybe not Brad, because wait. Anyway, where are
Dude,
other
that's at the
people?
hospital. The black guy who
No,
we
I'm
haven't
like
seen
Brad
forever.
probably.
Brad. No, the the black guy who hasn't been on the
Oh,
show.
Felix. I
Felix,
was gonna
where is
say.
he at?
I was gonna say Brad probably wouldn't be in a situation with Christina because
Or
he
yeah,
stole his
because
nephew. Yeah.
right.
But
But Felix,
but like you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
where are other people who could like have conversation
right.
about essentially being like attacked by media? I do think that there's something to GH about not understanding how media works. It's the same thing with like Jocelyn's like the revenge porn just being
Hmm.
like deleted forever. In what world?
Right, it's not.
That just I don't know. And it's also not lost on me. Um the kind of lack of really well done representation for Black folks. It's not lost on me. I didn't realize that Jacqueline wasn't on contract. Like, so it's not lost on me that like we have a Latino family that is not that it could essentially disappear tomorrow.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, where are the people? Where are the roots? Where are we putting? How are we putting down roots for like diverse families and diverse experiences? It's not happening. Um,
And they keep
where?
talking like as
Oh,
a
sorry.
like the mom, like Blaze and her mom keep talking about this son. It would be great for him to show up, to show support for, his sister, to push
Hmm.
back on mom, to be an ally outside of, I mean, Blaze has great friends in Port Charles, but she needs family backup against her mom. And it sounds like the brother would be great in that. But nope, we're
Hmm.
not going to see him, you know?
And truth be told, we do have a really big cast, and so
We do.
whatever. But
But,
that just means you have to tell story that intersects them more.
or just focus on stories that are relevant, right? Again, appreciate that there's a nephew that plays violin. And I guess they're trying to get him together with Trina, but honestly, I would prefer to see Blaze's brother come into town.
Well, especially if
Or
he was that
Taggart.
age group.
Yeah,
Well,
or
especially
yeah, exactly.
because we
He
do
could be with
need.
Yeah, he could be with Trina instead. That would be way more interesting. Um,
Yeah.
or
Well,
Taggart,
I thought that him
or
and I thought Gio and Trina was fine this week. Whatever. I just want her to have a story. But
Mhm.
I agree, like, how do you bring in more diverse perspectives? How do you bring in people who are like going to be in relationship with the people who are always on?
Mhm.
You don't actually need to create another. I think that's why we have Geo being so close to Sunny and the Cirillos, because you can't create another character that just has no ties.
Right.
Like, that doesn't make sense. Where are now we got everybody living at the Quartermains like a flop house. It's just I
Just we create, or just not necessarily create new characters. Invest in the ones you already have.
invest in the characters you have.
Right.
Absolutely. It doesn't make sense to me. I'll also say that, as y'all can see, this is like such a freestyle this week. We're going to talk for a few more minutes. I would also say that what they're doing to Ava is so heavy-handed and ridiculous. I'm okay with Ava being a baddie. I'll watch more West do whatever she wants to. I, I am not predispositioned to like Ava. I didn't particularly like her until she went through her redemption arc. I've always thought Mora was phenomenal, but Ava was I could take her leave. Um, but what they're doing is too heavy-handed. What do you mean Sunny is more mad at Ava than Natalia? What do you mean y'all got Trina like, essentially scared of Ava now? Or in one scene you got Josh saying that Ava shouldn't have Avery, but in another scene she's telling Carly that Donna can't stay with Sunny. What are we talking about? Do we know? Are these same people writing the scripts? Have we forgotten what's happening from scene to
Mhm.
scene?
Yeah, and it makes me really concerned about Ava's tenure because they're making the story more about what Ava did than they are making it about the actual bigoted behavior. And so they're really painting her against the wall. One, she knows the secret about Sunny. Two, she's been really heavy-handed and kind of like crazy with him and his family. She has, and like some other, like Christina pointed out, she has no friends now except for Trina. Two, I also did not
Barely.
like, yeah, I also did not like how she put Trina in the middle, but it actually seems like a departure of Ava's character. I don't think Ava would do that. She's
Right.
not desperate. That's the act of a desperate person, and Ava has never been that desperate. I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so some people are like, does this mean that Mora's leaving? Like, and I'm like, oh my God, I hope not. She's still in the credits. She's still in the. But man, how do they turn this around? I don't know.
I
Which is
don't
fine if she wants to be an evil villain as long as she's on campus. Okay, as long as I get to watch her.
campus.
Look at she's on the show. We get
Right,
to watch
right,
her, but
right.
make it make sense though. Make it make sense to who she is now. Because right now it's not
It
making
is
sense.
absolutely wild to me because all of the complaints I was seeing about the way Nina was treated, and I always said that Ava actually has like way like Nina. It has always had balance. They just haven't shown it. Nina
Hmm.
has never been by herself. even when Willow wasn't talking to her, that was really so much about her own behavior and her being so extra and not taking a moment to pause. Because she's always had Curtis, she's had Maxie and Maxie's family, she's had Sasha. And so when you juxtapose that with Ava, who is truly being demonized
Mm-hmm.
in a way that just feels unbalanced. And I do think they're trying to rush to tell this story. And I get that, but also, babes, this is a soap opera. We're fine if you slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
We're fine. It's okay. You can tell a story that makes sense. That's paced out in a way that makes sense. And we're gonna be here for it. Because they got me very nervous for bringing my JJ back. Because I'm gonna tell you this right now. If they bring back Lucky Spencer and he's a bigot against Aiden, I'm gonna show up to Prospect Park and I'm gonna be a activist of one.
There's been like some conversation about that, and it sounds like, well, people were thinking that he would come back bigoted against Aiden because Jonathan Jackson is a Christian, but he's played other
I don't think that
roles.
that's
Yeah, I don't think that's
yeah,
the
yeah. I mean, he's like
conversation.
so close to Tony
Yeah,
Geary too. Like, I don't think that
yeah,
that's like the case.
he's played other roles that would actually happen. So I'm hoping that
Yeah,
they don't do that, and
I
I don't
don't
think
think if
that
that
really
happens. Just to be clear, I don't think if that happens, I do not think it's because of Jonathan Jackson. I
Jonathan
think
Jackson,
that would be a writing
because the
decision.
writers are stupid. Um, yeah, but we don't have that much longer to go. I don't know if they can pull
That's
this
all I
story.
got for the week. It just
Yeah,
made me mad. That was all I wanted to talk about aside from the interview.
yeah, um, yeah. That's pretty
You
much
want
it. I
you
mean,
want
the
to talk about what
story.
happens next week?
Yeah, because it was a short week, and there wasn't the only story that was going on was that. So,
Which I actually don't mind.
yeah.
I don't mind. I don't mind having a week dedicated to a story. Yeah, I don't mind that.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about it. Monday, Portia confronts Laura. Sorry, Portia is back, thankfully.
Hmm.
Nina and Tasha have a heart to heart. Cody makes a confession. Sam is frustrated with Drew, and Willow makes an impulsive move. Let me say this: Samantha McCall is my girl, and whatever she said is right. I'm taking a stand for Samantha. I'm tired of it. Anyway, I can't even talk about it. I'm tired of it. Sam is my girl. I'm taking a stand. Um, Tuesday, Trina is suspicious. Curtis defends himself to Portia. Curtis, what you doing? Sasha witnesses something scandalous. Lois shares a secret with Olivia. Maxie finds a new mission.
I think he might not have discussed going to see Heather at the prison with Portia, and Portia's probably finding out. Like, what the hell?
Wednesday, Sunny questions Jason. Cody and Willow find common ground. What? I can't even. Ava makes a dangerous move. Michael lets something slip to Drew. Jagger does some eavesdropping. Thursday, Christina is eager to help Blaze. Felicia visits Cody. Portia reveals her plan to Jordan. Heather's request surprises Laura. And finally, Friday, Laura seeks Trina's perspective. Sasha confides in Cody. Anna talks her plan through with Jason. Elizabeth shares happy news about Jake. Curtis and Portia hash things out. Don't make me mad next week, GH. Don't make me mad like you made me this week. It's my only request.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for shifting with us.
This was a mess of us, but we just needed to talk about it. We will see you next week.
Yay. Happy Sunday. Oh, don't forget to comment, like, share, do all the
Subscribe.
things. We
All the
appreciate
things.
all of you. All right. Bye.